Today we have a guest, Dave DeSantis from United States. He's for the past 10 years in the camp training negotiating systems, right?
Yeah, I've been working with camp systems now for the last couple of years. And prior to that, a long business career running companies.
Mm-hmm. Dave, thank you for taking our invitation. Borna contacted you and you said yes. So I'm looking forward to learn a couple of new things on the topic of negotiation from the master negotiator.
Super. I hope I can help.
Yeah, thank you. You have a very interesting tagline on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
You help business owners who want to get rid of their companies that are evaluated from $10 to $100 million to get better deals.
Yeah, that's one of the big parts of our business. We're not limited to that, but that is a very big part of it.
That's fantastic niche. How did you find that niche?
Well, what we found is, being many years in business, we found that niche was not as well served as some of M&A activity for larger companies who would typically hire investment bankers to help them with that process. But we found that there's a lot of privately owned companies of about that size that really do need some help. They don't know quite what to do. Many of them were private, family-owned companies, and they don't go through a lot of these types of transactions. So they really benefit from someone who's been through them before and can bridge the gap with knowledge of how these companies operate from just a normal business point of view, and then also the financing and legal aspects of buying and selling companies.
So you're like coaching them to better negotiate in the process of selling their business, or?
Yeah, both selling and buying. So for those who are selling, first we help people get very clear on what their expectations are and what to expect through the whole process. We've done hundreds, probably thousands of deals over the many years. So we have a pretty good feel for how the transactions and how the conversations go forward. We find that especially with privately owned companies, there's an awful lot of emotion tied into the companies.
Yeah.
Many of the founders started these firms from on their own, and they've grown to be quite successful, but at the end of the day, they're still their babies.
Yeah.
So how do you sell your baby? That's a tough thing. So there's a lot of strategy involved in conversations with exactly what the owners expect to get out of the process, and to understand that not everybody looks at their business quite the way that they do.
So if I understood it well, someone decided to sell their company, but they're still emotionally attached to their company.
Yeah, sure. You have your own business, right, that you're pursuing now with these podcasts, and I'm sure you take it very personally. And if someone came to you and said, hey, we can do it better, or we don't think it's worth quite as much as you think, you're going to have some emotional reaction to that. And what we try to do is coach our clients that that's how everyone thinks. Yeah. And you have to understand that and get into the heads of the other people, the people at the other side of the table. We call our respected opponents. And figure out how they make decisions.
Respected opponents. Cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how does this process look like? Like the business owner contacts you and says, I need your help. I need you to coach me or help me negotiate a better deal while selling my company.
So it happens a number of ways. And we tried to actually express that in our website for people who are searching us out. So probably the biggest source of business that we get are from referrals. People that we've worked with in the past, they tell their friends, hey, we had a great experience with people from camp systems. You need some help, talk to them, and then see where it goes from there. We have others who come to us on our website, and they really fall into 4 categories. Either they have just an urgent problem, a very big decision that they have to make or negotiation, and they need answers fast. And they're just overwhelmed. So they call us to say, how do we do this? And they really want us to dig in and help them, direct them on what are the kinds of questions to ask, what should you be thinking about, and have kind of a calm voice of reason in the background for them. Think of it like a boxing match. We're not in the ring throwing the punches, but we're the guy in the corner telling the boxer, hey, go to the left, the guy has a bad right punch, and how to stay out of the way and do that.
Yeah.
So we have people who need urgent help, they'll call us. We have others who maybe it's not so urgent in the moment, but they realize that they need to do something different. Maybe their sales aren't progressing quite as well as they should. They feel like they're leaving money on the table when they're negotiating their agreements, and they just want to get better. So they'll call us in for a longer term assignment to help them teach their sales teams on how actually to negotiate. And our system that we teach is just that. It's a system. It's not a series of tricks or tactics, but rather a very systematic way to think about, prepare, and then execute the actual negotiation.
Yeah, we mentioned that you are specialized, mostly specialized when negotiating $10 to $100 million deals. Is there a difference between like $1,000 deal and $50 million deal?
You know,
what are the key differences?
So the truth is, while that's what we focus on, you know, those size deals, we really work across the entire range. We work from coaching individuals with their specific business or other kinds of issues. So for example, we have one person that I'm coaching now. He has a brokerage business with a partner, and they're looking to separate from one another. So that too is a negotiation. How do you do that fairly equitably without protecting the customer base, yet recognizing true value of both parties? That in itself is a negotiation. So it's not just 10 to 100 million.
I understand.
Or the gamut. So what's different? What's different? And I think we start with what's the same.
Okay.
And what's the same is that every negotiation is between people. And people make decisions across the world pretty much the same way. They process some information, they see some information, then they process it. And you know, when you see something or you hear something, you tell yourself a little story in your head about what I think I saw, and you know, that guy's a jerk and I shouldn't do that or work with him, or this person is great, I have a good experience. Then based on that, you're going to generate some kind of an emotion. This is a good opportunity or this is a bad opportunity. After that, if you decide that it's a good opportunity, now you're predisposed to have a positive attitude and look forward. If you think it's going to be a bad opportunity, now you're looking for reasons not to do it. And that process goes on over and over and over again in every negotiation.
Okay.
So what we teach people is that little story that you tell yourself in the head, that's your story and yours alone. Do not think that the other side is telling themselves the same exact story. They can't. Your story is 100% particular to you. Okay.
So to like trying to simplify that, is there like some kind of type of affirmation you teach your clients to put in your head, what to think of the other party when negotiating?
Well, I guess the first thing is in the mindset, and you have the background in the neuroprocessing, is think of negotiation. We think of it differently than others, many others. And what we honestly believe and know to be true is that compromise is not required in negotiation. The only thing required in negotiation is effort, work, decisions, and offering others and keeping for yourself the right to veto, the right to say no. If you focus on those three things, you will always be safe. You will never go backwards in a negotiation. So when we tell people, how do you start? You start with yourself. What's important to you? What are you looking to get out of this negotiation? What can you deliver to the other side with 100% confidence, and how can you do that? If you go into a negotiation, at least knowing that much, you're not worried about how can I do this? Should I do this? What? You want to leave your mind as open as possible to listening to actually what they want. What is their pain? Why are they asking you to talk to them? And what we find over many, many thousands of negotiations is that people's problem that they're trying to solve is always related to something that they cannot control. So they're looking for you to help them control something they can't control.
Can you give me an example?
So I gave the example when we started about buying and selling companies.
Okay.
So usually the owner of the company, they've either reached retirement age, or they don't have a succession plan. They don't have relatives to give it to. So they want to do something else with their life. So they've already made that emotional decision to move on. But what they're thinking though is, what is the real pain now? I've made the decision I want to go, but my pain is that I don't know how to do it. What's the first step? Or my pain is I want to play golf the rest of my life, and maybe that will cost me, I don't know, $10 million for the rest of my life and my families and my grandchildren. But I think my business is worth $50 million.
Okay.
So we have to get clear to them, what is the real pain you're trying to solve? I want to play golf the rest of my life, and I want to give some money to my kids and grandkids. So once you get clear on that, then it's, okay, what's the benefit of you doing that? I'm relaxed and the life is great. What's the pain of you not doing that? I'm still stuck here in the business and I can't enjoy my life and I can't enjoy things. So when you go through that process, they discover their real pain is what they aspire to achieve, not some artificial number, 50 million, 100 million that they think their business is worth.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing they have to become clear on. And once they do that, then they get into the negotiation, and they're always looking to make sure that they cover what's really important to them.
Okay.
But they put that aside. Once they have that, then they spend 100% of their time living in the world of the respected opponent.
Okay.
What are they trying to do? Because at the end of the day, the deal will only happen if the other side gets what is important to them.
So
that's how we start.
Okay, so if I understood well, like 20% of your coaching job is to be a psychotherapist.
Yeah, we're humans, right? Yeah. And so whether, I don't know if psychotherapy is so
I'm kidding.
appropriate, but at the same time, it's we want to get clarity. People ask me, who are the most difficult people to negotiate with? And I always say people who don't know what they want.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Because it's a moving target. And if it's a moving target, you can't help them. They're by far the most difficult people to deal with.
I've mentioned to you before we started the interview, my background is neuro-linguistic programming, sales, presentations, and social engineering. And I always had this problem with defining what technique comes from where. So what's the NLP? What's the sales, professional sales? What's the negotiation? What's seduction? What's social engineering? Many of these techniques are pretty much similar or even the same. So what would you say, since you're also in the sales business, what would you say, what is the biggest differentiation of negotiating compared to sales, to social engineering, and to NLP?
Truthfully, I don't think there's much difference at all. At the end of the day, negotiation is the process of making decisions. So what we really study and pay very close attention to is how people make decisions. So whether you're in a selling environment, or you're purchasing something, or you're discussing with your partner, where should we go to lunch? If the end state of that discussion is a decision, we'll go for Italian food or we'll go for Chinese food, that's a decision. So whenever you're in a discussion that is going to result in a decision, you're in a negotiation. So we really don't believe in this idea of there's a set of tactics and tricks that you need to follow to negotiate successfully or trick someone else to give you what you want. We honestly believe that we're just going to follow the basic laws of human nature, that people look for self-respect, people want autonomy, people don't like to be told what to do, and no one appreciates that. So if you think from that perspective and you allow your respected opponent to have the same feeling, then what do they really want? Don't try to go against them. Don't try to trick them, because eventually they'll figure out what you did. And for our case, you know, when you're negotiating and creating agreements, you need a partner who will implement the deal after you sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
So there's no point in tricking them into signing paperwork if they have no interest in implementing after the fact.
Yeah, so we could like simplify things for the audience that the outcome of every discipline is to like achieve the state where a person we're talking to knows what they want, if we know what we want.
Well, it's two. So we say, what is a successful negotiation? A successful negotiation is when both parties, when you're able to deliver to the other party what they want the way that they want it, and you get what you want in the way that you want it, that is a successful negotiation. So both parties are leaving self-satisfied that they achieved what they want. And that's what we call our the mission and purpose of a negotiation. The mission and purpose is, what is the long-term aim and the continuing responsibilities that the other party needs to have a successful agreement. And that's what we strive to do. We know if we do the work up front of what we require to meet our long-term aim and our short-term requirements, we can spend 100% of our time seeing if it makes sense for us to deliver that to the other party.
Just to make another parallel from the NLP. In the NLP, there's a famous, not so good technique these days that's called the yes ladder. And Jim Camp named the book Start with No.
Yes.
What is the difference when you get your client or your party, the other party, to say yes and to start with no, as Jim said?
So think about yourself, right? How do you feel when someone is trying to convince you to do something and you're not ready to make a decision? They're trying to convince you to get you to say yes, and you're not ready to say yes. What do you do? I'm asking you a question.
Yeah.
What do you do, Sasha?
I'll say
How do you
probably
feel?
I feel incongruent, you know. I might say yes, but I feel incongruency.
Perfect. So you might say yes, yet you may feel incongruent, right? So how committed are you really to that yes?
You're not committed if you feel incongruent.
At all.
Yeah.
At all. Yet what if you had the freedom when someone asked you, do you want this? And if they told you, it's perfectly okay if you don't want it.
Yeah.
Just tell me no, I don't mind. I don't want to give you something that you don't want. How does that make you feel?
It feels like a relief.
It's a relief.
Yeah.
So that's just basic human nature. So these pundits who say, yeah, yes is a magic word, we say quite the opposite. We say with yes really doesn't mean anything unless you know what comes next, how to implement. But if you get people to say no, and you give them permission not to do something they're not ready to do, they get very relaxed. And after they say no, they trust you more, and they're much more likely to tell you what they really do want. Okay.
So So that would be a tip for the opening the conversation, or?
Exactly. It is open. So we're going to discuss where we're going to go out to dinner today. It's a very simple negotiation. I'll tell you now, I'm allergic to Chinese food, so I'd prefer not to go there. I'll tell you right up front. But you know what? We'll kind of come into discussion. If we choose to pick any restaurant, location, or something you don't like, please tell me. It's perfectly okay. We'll find some other one. Don't feel bad. So now, how would that conversation go compared to, I have my heart set on Chinese, but you don't want to do it, and let's fight about it.
Yeah.
So we're a big proponent of offering people the right to say no, the right to veto.
Okay. So it's, we could say it's like setting the frame, right? Like the technique framing. In this
Yes.
frame, it's okay to say no, and then we're going to build up our story. I've listened to some of your podcasts, you know, when where you talked about how the sales is going to happen if a person you're selling to or negotiating with can like associate their experiences with your story.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. And that's related to the way people make decisions. They make decisions based on their own experiences. What worked out for them in the past, what didn't work out for them in the past. So if you can get them to share some of those experiences, you can then draw analogies of how your product service may be similar to something that worked for them in the past. So you're going on a ride then with something that was positive for them. And they're much more likely to listen to your offers if they associate it with something good, as opposed to something bad, where instead of listening to you, they'll look for everything that you say will turn into an objection of why they don't need to do it.
Okay. In the few sales books, like if you heard, you probably read Spin and the Challenger Sale. You can read, people can read there, and I personally can recommend these books. Like everyone should read it who's in the sales. If you do your presentation well, and if you communicate your message well, and you listen to your client, then you will then you will not get to the point where they will have objections.
Okay.
So you will avoid their objections because your presentation was so good. You find their needs so well. You answer their questions. You challenge them to think on a different way. Then you won't need to solve their objections. Then you won't need to close your sale. That's like basically.
I'm familiar with both of those books, and they're both quite good, right? My takeaway from them with respect to presentations is a little bit different. So spin selling, for example, where they say there's two really powerful kinds of questions. When you're going to ask someone, what is the cost of you not solving your problem? Let's assume we figured out what their problem is, because nothing happens unless someone has a problem and someone has a solution. So once you figure out what their problem is, you ask them, what happens if you don't solve this problem? And that's then starts building what we call vision in their head. Oh my gosh, then this is terrible. We can't do these other things. It's bad. Then they follow up with the question, what can you do in the future when you solve this problem? Then it becomes a real aspiration for them in going forward. So like my example with the business owner, look, I picture myself on the golf course every day, having fun, relaxing. When I sell my business, that's really the value that they're seeing. Okay. So when I'm making a presentation, all I'm going to do is summarize all the events that we've already negotiated. A presentation, many people make the mistake of starting their discussion with a presentation, PowerPoint deck.
Okay.
And they do that because they're showing everything great that we can do for you. What they fail to realize is you don't know what the other person really wants. And you should only be presenting to them information that solves their problem, what they want. So with the approach of the challenger sale and spin selling that they're mentioning, what they do is spend a lot of time determining what the other side wants. The cost of not getting it, the value of getting it. Once you understand that, then you start talking about your solution piece by piece, very small steps. And you negotiate, okay, we have it in red. Do you like blue, green, or orange? Well, orange is nice, but if I had to have red, that's fine. That's acceptable. Super. Do you want it on the 6-year payment plan or the 6-month payment plan? Right? No, I have the cash now, and if the price is a little better, 6 months is great. Good. So we negotiated that. So the presentation then is nothing, hey, let's summarize what we've already agreed on. You want the red one, and you're happy to pay for it in 6 months. Right, that's great. Let's go. So you never actually made a presentation. What you did was just summarize the agreements that you made in your negotiation with your respective opponent.
I've also listened to another podcast where I heard that you're against making the push in the sale. Absolutely. What do you do to close the sale? if you're not like pushy at the end of your process?
So sales, if you're doing it well and you really understand the problem from the other person has, and you've been able to share with them how you can help them make their problem go away, the real close then is, okay, when do you want to have your problem go away? I don't need to say anything else. And if they say, well, if my problem is not that great or I can't afford it now, that's just another reason to say, okay, I haven't finished the negotiation and I have to go back. So we never, when you try to close someone, we get back to the problem when you're asking for someone to say yes before they're ready. You never want to put someone in that position. You're doing two things. You're making them uncomfortable, plus you're showing neediness on your side. So you never want to do that. You want to give them the opportunity to say, yep, I'm ready to solve my problem. I'm confident that you have the solution to my problem. And let's get started.
Okay.
So they're the ones that actually feed the close as opposed to you pushing it on them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but how do you know that that there isn't like there aren't some patterns that could like speed up the process?
So there's many things that you can do to speed it up, or at least identify how much real time, energy, money, and emotion the other side has to commit to this deal. Okay. So if they only have a finite amount of time before they need to make a decision, right? If you discover that in your negotiation process, the decision will have to come before their clock runs out when they need to make a decision. All right. So that's the hard stop line. What you can do maybe to drive the decision before that clock runs out is you can say, our offer is time limited. It's your choice to make the decision if you want it or not.
Okay.
But if I learn they really don't need to make this for another 6 months, but if I come back and say this particular offer that we negotiated is time limited for 1 month.
I understand.
I don't care if you buy it or you don't, but I'm just telling you, if you don't take this offer in 1 month, we're going to have to start again.
So that's what I wanted to know. Do you use the scarcity principle?
Yeah, you can use that, but you have to be no bluffing on your part.
Okay, definitely. Right. That's also incongruent if you're bluffing.
Yeah, because you have to be completely honest. If the offer is only there for 1 month, it's only there for 1 month. Once you violate that principle, you lose your reputation, and that's the worst thing you can do in any negotiation.
Yeah. I think that we could agree that the greatest trait that a good negotiator could possess is the ability to control his or her emotions, right?
Absolutely.
So why am I talking about this? Because I want to know, how did you start it, and how did you handle your emotions when you joined the negotiation frame? Were you good with your emotions before, or did you learn to control your emotion in the process of learning?
So I think a little bit of both. A little bit of both. And the key thing from our perspective and what we coach is the way to control your emotions is to control your own neediness. You don't need the deal. You just want the deal. The only thing you need is air to breathe in the next 30 seconds. After that, you're going to need some water. You're going to need something to eat. Then maybe you need some shelter. You're going to want to have a friend eventually. But those are the only things that you really need. You certainly don't need this new car. You don't need to buy this house. You don't need to sell your company in the next 30 seconds or 3 months or whatever. You will live if that doesn't happen. So once you realize the difference between needing something and wanting something, all of a sudden it reduces the temperature of your emotions.
Yeah. So it's about the self-talk you do with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Making the distinction between need and want. Right.
It's a big part of the preparation. It's a big part of the
Okay,
preparation.
so in the process, when you like lose your temper, I am sure you have at least one situation where you lost your temper. Are you like putting again and again this sentence in your head, or?
So when I realized my own emotions, and I'm human like everyone else, right? So your own emotions are getting the best of you, that's when you call for a break. All right. When your emotions are starting to elevate a little bit, you have some adrenaline in your bloodstream that's causing your pupils to dilate a little bit more. Your heart's beating a little faster. Maybe you start to sweat a little bit. You're getting a little bit agitated. Okay. That's not something that you can turn off in a nanosecond. Those hormones need to be reabsorbed into your body to bring you down to a calm state. That's one of the key reasons why you want to take a break. It's the same thing if you notice your respected opponent is getting a little bit agitated. You have to realize what's happening to them. It's their emotions are causing them to behave like this. And in any negotiation, you always want as a calm emotional state as possible between both parties. Because it's in a calm emotional state is when you can have the best dialogue possible.
Okay.
And so, that's your goal.
Great. So you should ask for a break, even if you control your emotion, but your the other party is losing their emotion. When you say break, does that break mean like a lunch break or like a month break?
It really depends on the situation. Okay. The break could be as simple as let's move to a different topic.
Okay.
Okay. So you're not physically leaving the room or getting off the phone.
Okay.
Maybe you want to go back to a point that you already have mutual agreement on. In our system that we teach, we always start with what's the mission and purpose of the negotiation event. So in this particular discussion, Sasha, my mission and purpose for this event is to provide you with information that is helpful to your audience. So they can learn something and maybe become a little bit better negotiators. That's why I'm here today, to deliver that to you. So if we ever got to a point where one of us is getting a little agitated, I could come back to you and say, wait a minute, Sasha, I must have done something wrong. Please tell me what happened. But like we agreed in the beginning, I'm here to help you help your audience. Where did I go wrong? What did I say? What did I do that took me away from that? So I'm going back to a safe point for you. That, okay, let's get Dave, you said something that is completely counter to what my audience believes. Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke, or I didn't say that in a way that I intended it. Let's go back and clean that up. All right. So I'm always going back to that mission and purpose because it's in your world and to your benefit.
Thank you, Dave. Can you please, if it's not too much to ask, can you tell us one example of really, really tough negotiation you had, and how did you manage to get through it and make the deal?
So I have one example that that I was personally involved in, and it was something that I was running the entire commercial operations for a company, and the owners of the company were looking to sell the business in 3 to 5 years. So my goal there was to help them grow the company in those 3 to 5 years so they could increase the valuation of the company for their eventual sale. Okay. So I had an idea, but these guys, the owners, were very risk averse. They ran a very successful business. They had everything that they needed, didn't want to risk anything. So the idea that I had was to change their commercial model, their sales and service model, was something that no way. We've been successful for 25 years doing this way. Why would we change that? So the negotiation was, okay, look, how can we mitigate risk for you and still have this possibility going on? So we came up with, again, in their world, to their benefit, they want to increase the value, but they don't want to take on any risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the way we worked that out was we have a different model that we're going to try in one market. And if that market works, then we'll move on to the next market 6 months later. And then only if it works, then we'll go a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't upset their business in total in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was they didn't believe it would work because they were convinced that only their way works.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, you know what? Don't even pay us for this.
Mm-hmm.
When the business is sold, we just want a small portion of the value that was created by this new model.
Wow.
So
Cool.
if the model doesn't work, nothing for you. No cost to you. You'll have your own business and it would sold just like we weren't here.
Yeah.
But if it works, we just want a small piece of the additional value that was generated.
And it was like the 3 to 5 year process, you said.
So 3 years later, when the company was eventually sold, it was valued at 8 times its cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to generate several $1 million of additional cash flow.
Wow.
With this new model.
Cool.
So every dollar we generated was worth $8 to the person who bought it. So our small percentage of contribution was multiplied by 8.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good payday for everyone. They realized a huge payday on their side. We realized a nice payday for implementing this model.
Okay, great.
But that was going in with a respected opponent who had no risk tolerance and was convinced they had the best way to run a business.
Yes, and when you told me this story, it's like the patience is like one of the probably biggest traits of the successful negotiator. Yeah,
exactly. And that comes back to the want versus need. I don't need this. It's interesting. It would be great. I want it, but it's going to take time, especially when you're dealing with people who are very risk averse. You have to take very small steps. Right? You know, you can do make small incremental decisions that are not viewed as too risky for them. But when you stack up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of these decisions over time, and if you ask them at the beginning, would you go from number 1 to 10? They'd say absolutely not.
Yeah,
but 1 to 2 and 2 to 3.
Yes.
So be incremental.
Yeah, definitely. Dave, can you tell me, if I wanted to be a successful negotiator, what qualities do I need to build?
So I think the first thing is to realize that it takes work and it takes effort. Because a lot of the things that will make a successful negotiator is doing things differently than the way we've been brought up and we think is what negotiation is all about. We tend to think of things from our own perspective because what we want to do, how we can help somebody else. But the truth is, decisions are made from inside the head of their respected opponent, not our heads. So you have to learn how to get in their head and figure out what they want. And once you do, then you can make a decision. Can I help this person? Do I want to help this person? So that would be my advice right here. Do your preparation. What can you actually deliver that you're confident with? What would it take for you to understand if you can help the person on the other side of the table and if you want to help them? All right. And the only way you can figure that out is to get inside their head and see what they actually want and why they want it.
Yeah. You know, I have an analogy. When I teach people, teach my students presentation systems, presentation models, I usually tell them that I can teach them techniques of the presentations in a day, but the mindset is something everyone needs to work on. To be a master presenter, it's like probably at least 6 months to get your mind in the right shape. The techniques is something that can be easily learned if you have the right mindset. Yeah. What about
even easily learned? I don't know. Some it's easy, others not so easy.
Right? Yeah. What's your opinion on confidence? Do you think that a good negotiator needs to have strong confidence, or?
I think good negotiator needs to have courage.
Okay.
Courage to actually express what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Courage to not be afraid that they may get a no from the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Courage when they do hear a no to just view it as nothing more than a decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a decision. And actually, it's a good decision because both parties understand what it means. We talked earlier when you hear a yes, and you said you'd have a non-congruent yes. Well, I don't know what that means. You said yes, but you really don't mean yes.
Yep.
If you say no to me, at least I know what that means.
Yeah.
And if I have the courage to understand where did I go wrong, why did you say no, what's missing, now I can continue with the negotiation. So I think you said confidence, I would just reframe that as courage. Courage to not be afraid to ask.
Okay, I accept your reframe, and I want to ask you, if the confidence is like connected, we could say that confidence could be connected with the fear of rejection, right? If you're overconfident, your fear of rejection could be also highlighted, right? So how did you handle your fear of rejection? Because I believe most of the people on the globe has a fear of rejection.
Absolutely, right? So we're going to go back to the neediness number one, that if it is rejected, so what? When I started this discussion, I didn't have whatever I'm looking for. So if I leave it without it, I'm in the same place. It's really not that bad. The other point is about neediness and rejection is when we think of negotiation, all it is a series. Think of our definition. I didn't say that. Okay. Our definition of negotiation is a little bit different for most people. So our definition is negotiation is the effort to create agreements between two or more parties with all parties having the right to veto. So that's a pretty stacked, tight sum of words. And there's three things in there that really stand out. Effort. That's to your point earlier, when you teach presentation skills, you could teach, do this, this, and this, but it takes 6 months of practice. Negotiation's the same way. It takes effort. Effort to create agreements. What's an agreement? For us, an agreement is nothing more than a collection of decisions.
Wow, cool definition. Yeah, good definition.
So if an agreement is nothing more than a collection of decisions, then how do people make decisions? And that was back to our earliest discussion, right? You tell yourself a story, you generate an emotion, and then sometimes you support that emotion with logic, not all the time. But you have to understand how people are making decisions. And then finally, with all parties having the right to veto. So that decision you make, I want it to be free for you. I don't want you to be incongruent with a yes. I want you to mean your yes. So the way I can help you not feel like you have to say yes and not mean it is to tell you right up front, please, if you don't like it, tell me. I won't be offended. It's perfectly okay. So I offer that right to veto. So if that's our definition of negotiation, effort, agreements, right to veto, we just continually do that in our conversations over and over and over again.
Wow, cool. Very interesting, yeah. Dave, you said before we started the interview, you said you've been to Zagreb a few years ago, in Zagreb, Croatia.
Yes.
So you said you liked it. You went to Plitvice, Plitvička jezera.
Yeah, you say that much better than me. And this was part of my time with when I was running that commercial operation. So we actually sold quite a bit of product in Croatia and in Eastern Europe.
Was it a Croatian company that hired you?
Yes, that's why I was there.
Really?
Right? So they were our
how did they find you? How did they find you? They Googled you, or someone referred you to them?
Well, the products that we sold were quite popular. So they were known, and they were medical products, but they were used in very tough environments for ambulances and military applications. So that's what we were known for, that type of thing. So the product had some knowledge. And so they reached out to us and said, we like your product. We have some applications that we think it would be useful for in Croatia. And that's how we got started.
Okay. So what's your experience on negotiating with Croats?
You know,
well, is it different or what's the same? Let's start from what's the same, as you would said it. If you
so
said
what's the same is that they're people.
Okay.
Right? And everybody wants the same thing. They want to have a happy life. They want to enjoy life. Okay. And the guys in Zagreb, they were great from that perspective for sure. They took me to great restaurants. They took us to share with us their homemade, I don't remember what you call it, but it's like the German schnapps, the highly distilled grapes.
Maybe rakia.
Maybe. Yeah, it was just drink a little bit of it though. It's pretty tough. But they were very social in that, and they were very caring about their customers, trying to serve them well. So that was the same that we see in many places we go. So what was different? Okay, because at the time I was there, the economic situation for some of their customers were such that they couldn't afford maybe some very high-priced American products. So they needed some things that were reliable. Because if they did make the investment, which they weren't afraid of making, they wanted to make sure that they could service them in the country efficiently and effectively. All right. And that was different based on the current economic situation compared to at the time selling in Canada, for example, or selling in Germany, where they weren't as concerned with that. They could focus more on initial investment or some other criteria. So as a function of the economic times when I was there, that influenced how people behaved in the negotiation. But underneath, people are people. Whether I'm in China or I'm in Japan or I'm in the US, Croatia, Europe, wherever, Australia, people want to do what's good for them. And most people don't want to harm anyone else in the process.
Yeah. Dave, if you could just give us a few recommendations. I've told you that I'm formally educated in the sales, NLP, and social engineering, but I've only read books on the negotiating. So if I want to learn more, what do I need to buy?
Well, first, I'd recommend, of course, Jim Camp's books. So Jim has written 2 books, Start with No, and also No, the only negotiating system you need for work and home. So those, of course, would be my 2 books, and they're available everywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can find them anywhere. If you talk about other negotiation books that are, I think, quite useful and bring a little bit of a different approach that I think is aligned with the CAMP system, Chris Voss wrote a good book a couple of years ago called Never Split the Difference. And we're good friends with Chris, and Jim Camp actually taught Chris the CAMP system when he first started with the FBI.
Yeah, I've read in Chris's book that he refers a lot to Start with No.
Yeah, so Chris, of course, he added quite a bit to it, specific for that application in hostage negotiation, and he brings some good insights into developing empathy and applying empathy in the negotiation process, which to us is completely aligned with our concept of mission and purpose, be in the world of the other party and to their benefit. So those are really the primary books that I recommend for negotiation.
Definitely, yeah.
Others for how people think and how they behave. You being a student yourself probably read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Really talking about the biases that we all carry with us. Many people that we speak with, our clients say, especially the engineering science, is everything is logical, or decisions are logical. And, some pretty smart guys won a Nobel Prize proving that that's not always the case. And that really is the way we think. So better to understand that than fight against it.
Yeah. Dave, thank you very much for this educating conversation we had. And I hope you'll come to Zagreb again. And if you come, when you come to Zagreb, contact me, and I'll take you to some restaurant you will definitely like.
Oh, that's very good. And I'll offer you the same when you come to the New York area. Yeah, give me a call, and we'll do the same thing here when we can all travel again.
Thank you very much.
So all I ask is for your listeners, if they want any other information about us, you could go straight to our website.
Okay, we'll put a link below the post so they can go directly.
Yeah, then people can learn more about us and get in contact with us.
Thank you, Dave. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Great. Me too, Sasha. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.